South Park Snow Day is the first 3D and co-op title in the incredibly popular TV and video game franchise, with previous entries including 2014's The Stick of Truth and 2017's The Fractured But Whole. So can South Park Studios deliver a 3D multiplayer title? Let's take a look and find out. The premise of the game is fairly simple. A blizzard has ravaged the town of South Park, and you, playing as the new kid, has got to find a way to stop it, facing armies of kindergarteners along the way. At your disposal is a relatively small range of 6 different weapons, of which you can only select 2 of for each mission, one being melee and the other ranged. This may sound simple, and while it largely is, combat can be enhanced with power-ups such as fart boosting and healing totems, and at certain intervals within a mission, you'll be greeted by either Jimmy or Henrietta offering you upgrades. Also, sometimes you will be forced to change up your strategy thanks to these special cards, which are chosen at the start of each game, will either give you a special ability, or if used by the enemy team, could render your weapon useless.
Haha, your weapons are all minus power now.
It's nothing we haven't heard of before, but it's still a nice way to change up the combat. As for the level design, they are fairly linear, but occasionally you can venture off the beaten path to find some extra items. And while objectives aren't always the same, they do usually amount to going somewhere and eliminating enemies. Whether that's to progress to the next area, or just retrieve an item, it doesn't really matter. The point is, I would have liked to see some more variation in terms of mission structure, say multitasking while defending an objective. There are some examples of this, such as when you're tasked with transporting a bucket of NFTs, but I would like to have seen something like this more than every couple of hours. Although there is at least a good old-fashioned boss fight at the end of every chapter, some of which can get pretty challenging. And to make up for the lack of variety in mission structure, enemy variety is great, with everything from healers to hockey players. All of this results in what is a satisfying yet fairly simple gameplay loop. But I presume you're not playing a South Park game for the groundbreaking combat. If you are, please
get help.
Most likely, if you're a fan of the show, you're playing for the comedy, and I'm pleased to tell you that it's definitely here. Some of the cultural references are pretty outdated due to the nature of video game development, so you can expect to be using toilet paper as currency.
I found this chest full of toilet paper. It's worth more than money. I'm rich.
Despite this, it still retains the classic South Park humor that made the previous entries in the franchise so successful. As for the visuals, I was pleasantly surprised. All of the characters look exactly like their 2D counterparts, and the environments and effects are both fairly high quality, with all of this being even more impressive due to it being the first 3D entry in the series. Another first for the franchise is multiplayer, and despite only being able to play with bots pre-release, I could tell that this feature is pretty well considered, with all the hallmarks of a 4-player co-op experience. And don't worry if you haven't got anyone to play with, as there is an offline single-player mode. I also didn't encounter any bugs, and performance was flawless from start to finish. So if they're able to launch with stable servers, we might be in for one of those long-forgotten playable releases. South Park Snow Day is an impressive 3D debut for the franchise, keeping both the iconic art style and signature humor intact. By the end of its roughly 1 hour each 5 chapters, you might start to want a bit more variety, but I think you'll enjoy it nonetheless.